Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second session of the Illusion podcast. We have the Zeik wizard over there. He's very the intelligent guy, the go-to guy. LeahBearz again with her nice little green shirt and cigarette. But she's really intelligent as well. We got the Mapoy over here, the Asian sensation from some Asian country. And,
the invasion.
This is Jimmy here. Asian. I will be your host. Now, we're going to talk about this topic here, if I can look.
Yeah, what was that news story you just had?
Find it. It's
kind of cool.
Yeah. I'm going to read it.
I'm just sitting here getting baked the whole time, getting ready to do this, and now that we're finally in the podcast sphere, we're lacking.
Yes, according to the Raw story, a story by Eric W. Dolan. Basically, it states that data from the U.S. survey cast doubt on U.S. classification of psychedelics as dangerous. Data from a government-sponsored survey indicates that psychedelic drugs like LSD, magic mushrooms, and peyote do not increase a person's risk of developing mental health problems. Everything has some potential for negative effects, but psychedelic use overall is considered to pose a very low risk to the individual and society. A clinical psychologist, Pal Orjan Johansen of Norwegian University of Science and Technology said psychedelics can elicit temporary feelings of anxiety and confusion, but incidents leading to serious injury are extremely rare. The study published online Tuesday in a PLS1 used data from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health survey to investigate psychedelic drug use and mental health problems. The survey is administered annually by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, a branch of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The researchers found psychedelic use was not associated with a higher rate of mental health problems. In fact, the use of psychedelic drugs appeared to reduce the risk of mental illness, though only slightly. Early speculation that psychedelics might lead to mental health problems was based on a small number of case reports and did not take into account either the widespread use of psychedelics or the not infrequent rate of mental health problems in general population. Case reports have indicated that psychedelic drugs can trigger pre-existing psychiatric conditions such as psychosis, panic attacks, anxiety disorders, and depression. Case reports provide important clues to researchers, but unlike scientific studies, they cannot be generalized to larger populations. Case reports of mental health problems following psychedelics are often comparable to case reports of mental health problems linked to intensive medication, visiting holy sites, or viewing beautiful artwork and sublime natural scenes. Previous research has established that LSD, magic mushrooms, and peyote are not addictive. They are not known to harm the brain. Psychedelic drug use has been gaining attention of medical researchers in recent years. Scientists from the Los Angeles Biomedical Research Institute, Harbor at UCLA, have found psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, can safely treat death anxiety in patients with advanced stage cancer. Scientists at St. Hopkins University School of Medicine have also found psilocybin created positive changes in attitudes, mood, and life satisfaction and behavior that has persisted for more than a year. Preliminary research on another drug that's often classified as a psychedelic, MDMA, indicated it could help those suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. The Federal Drug Enforcement Administration classifies LSD, psilocybin, and peyote as Schedule I substances, a category reserved for very dangerous drugs with no medical value.
It's fascinating. I always wondered why these things were illegal in the first place. You know, as you find magic mushrooms weren't discovered until 1957, and this is right around the whole time of the hippie movement, and they're starting to ask all these questions about Vietnam. And my theory on this has always been that the reason these things are illegal is if you ever tripped on like mushrooms or anything like that, you tend to get a constant sense of contradiction. Like every statement needs to be contradicted, and there's a metaphor for everything. So what authority would want a drug in the population that causes everything to be contradicted? And I think now what's happening is you have all these scientists that, the data and the evidence are becoming overwhelming, and they just can't ignore it anymore. And they can't just keep simply saying like, oh, these things make you crazy. They make you jump off of balconies or in front of cars or kill your kids. They just can't keep saying that anymore. So they have to, they're forced to change their position because, we do live, after all, in sort of, semi-open information society. So,
Right.
But yeah, I've always kind of wondered about that.
Nice.
What do you think?
I don't know, I just think it's interesting, the whole, like, different perception of self and what control is. I feel taking psychedelics kind of shows you like sort of like the truth or the real reality. Like, for example, sitting here and reading this, it talks about like death. It helps with dealing with death, and to me, like, for me, psychedelics, like I don't know, it makes it seem like there is no death. Like death is not anything. It's just some sort of word. Like the fear of just that there's nothing is a strange fear for me that I used to have before, but now I just don't have a fear on that. Like, just being everything, being a part of a picture, being everything and not moving or anything. Just
right. So I guess there's your other reason for it being illegal, is the fact that it is an effective medication for certain things, like in your case, death anxiety. You can't deny that, and there's numerous reports of things like that, including pot and all these natural psychoactive drugs, all of which are illegal, mind you, because they know that all of these can be used as some sort of medicine. The problem is you can't patent a plant. You can patent a chemical that you come up with in a lab, and you can say that this is your chemical and you're going to sell it, and there's a certain amount of time that you can sell it as a brand name only, and then generics can come out after that. But still, you can't put a patent on a plant. You can't, proprietize pot, and that's why a lot of these plants aren't given their credit as the medicines they are, because they just won't make the same amount of money off of it.
Right. I took genetics in high school, and my teacher, Mr. Medley, was like, "Oh, he's really cool." Like, I didn't realize how like liberal he was ever, because he came off like this very snobby man. But the first day of genetics, he gives us this article about the medicinal uses of THC, and the next day we talked about it. And he's like, after reading that, I don't know about you, but I would much rather smoke a J for a million of these issues that they prescribe drugs for that cause heart disease and possible strokes and have numerous side effects. Right. He's like, when I could go just smoke a J and it would have the same effect and probably better.
Right.
And I just
did you know there's a whole part of your body called the endocannabinoid system, which transmits cannabinoids, which are produced naturally by your brain, to other parts of your body. Your body uses cannabinoids to communicate with itself and for the brain to communicate with the body. What makes you think that, cannabinoids wouldn't be some form of medicine? I mean, this is something that's in your body. That's the hallmark of all drugs, is mimicking substances that are already in there. Yeah. And, your body naturally makes cannabinoids, which is what is actually what supposedly sends people into like weed dependency and stuff. People that need to wake up and smoke, is because what happens is eventually your body says, well, fuck it, I'm not going to make these cannabinoids because they're so plentiful in my environment. Right. So that's why it's important to try to stay out of habits. If you are going to be smoking weed, to try to let your body do its natural thing. Don't don't let it stop making those chemicals, because then you're going to be fucked, and you're going to be lethargic and sitting on the couch all day and not doing shit with your life. Any other interesting news stories over there?
I have another one here.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
What's your question?
All right. Out of any of the philosophers that you know of, or great thinkers, right? People, not necessarily like scientific discoveries, but people with views on life and how to live it. Who would be your favorite and why?
I don't know. I'm really unfamiliar about that one. I have like a sacred love, Plato, and I also have like
Plato. Plato's the worst. I
I
fucking hate Plato.
hate Plato.
He's the reason that we have the shit we have today. He's the reason we live in this weird backward society.
I know, but it's not that sort of thing that gets me. But then again, most of the time I'm probably agreeing more with Aristotle.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of personally despise Plato just for the whole social control and like Plato's philosophy for the ruling class and the elites, man. These are the guys that love Plato.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that you just if you really want to like control the masses, you get yourself some Plato and like
And just let it happen.
and just let it fucking happen, man. Like, oh, you guys can't see what's going on. You just see the reflection on the wall of the cave, man.
Yeah.
Like, you got to let us, the people that see the light, man. You got to let us guide you. Like, fuck that, man. Like,
I do have a huge place for Confucius, though.
Confucius.
And like the path.
Please, you got to explain that to me again, because I remember
The path of
Confucius
the
back.
Enlightenment?
I mean, I remember this back in high school, but I don't
Like I can't even break it down anymore, but it goes through the 8 stages that lead to the path of enlightenment. I don't even remember.
What's
what
the
it
core
is.
philosophy? I mean, like, what's the?
Live a life that's pretty much selfless and.
Oh, right. He's
where
the guy.
you search out education the most.
Right.
And your purpose in life is simply to learn and live and discipline yourself. And in that process, you'll come to enlightenment.
Okay, now I remember Confucius.
Yes.
It was sort of like the disciplinary. It was kind of related to Buddhism, but not really.
And like the main point was really to find complete self-realization.
Right.
Have self-enlightenment, like within
But it wasn't
yourself.
very like socially conscious. Really, it wasn't.
No, it was very much like an internal, you only.
Because from what I remember of Confucianism is like that it inspires all these Chinese teachers, and the
your
reason
actions, you would inspire like the what's the word I'm looking at? Like the pass it on, the pay it forward sort of thing.
Right.
That was also like a side fact, but like you were supposed to do nothing in your own like benefit, or you're just always supposed to be the helping hand and work your way through. But there were numerous other levels. It's been years since I read Confucius, but it always touched on that.
Yeah, I've always wanted to explore some more of the Eastern religions, because I just believe that it's such a sharp break from what we believe here in the West. And it's like, and by West I mean everything from like Christianity to Judaism and Islam. These are all based on basically like these Platonic principles. Like, the whole house of cards is built on it. So it's like, when you look at these other religions, it's just such a complete stark contrast. It's like the whole religion, over there is like you yourself are like the center of your own universe, and like what is it? Hinduism, the thing sitting on the locust, like what's his name, the Dharma or whatever, or no. I forget the guy's name. He opens his eyes and the world comes into being, right?
Yeah,
he closes his eyes and the world goes out of being, right? So it's like,
It's all about self-realization, self-enlightenment.
Right,
it's coming
right.
to an understanding and a peace with yourself, as well as a sense of freedom as well.
Right, and I think that's a lot of what we're missing, like in today's society. That's why I personally love Epicurus myself, because he figured out, 2,000 years ago almost, like what it really takes to be happy.
Right.
Like, you have all this like consumerist crap going on, and this has been going on. This is nothing new. People chase after these things because they think that the next thing they buy is just going to bring them happiness. Like, that's it. They're going to get it. And this guy figured it out, and he believed. And there weren't actually a lot of philosophers at the time that shared the view that pleasure should be the end of life. That that you should live life just to have fun. He was unique in that belief in himself, but yet at the same time, he himself never lived a life of high luxury or lavish food or any of that. Because he figured out, he loved to have sex and all that, but he figured out that the key to life the three things you really need are friends, freedom, and an analyzed, thoughtful life. Mm-hmm. So when he moved to, I think he moved to Athens, and he bought a house, and he had all his friends move in with him, and they all lived in this one house because he understood that, like, it's cool if you, like, meet your friends, like, out for lunch is one thing, but if you're, like, living with these people, it's different. This is like how, like, humans have lived for, eons as, clans. Like, it's weird to go home by yourself and, like, fucking microwave a TV dinner and, you know what I mean, like, listen to music. Like, it's strange. It's not how humans are meant to live, and like, that's part of what I feel like causes a lot of depression and anxiety in humans. So he figured that it's, friends. By freedom he meant basically independence, self-reliance, not having to, take from the hand that feeds. I think they moved out in the country eventually, and they started their own, like, commune where they, like, raised their own crops. But basically it was all about having independence, and then analyze life, which is basically taking time to reflect on your fears and worries and accomplishments and things that you want to do, because you got to stop. In other words, you got to back off from the rat race and kind of take time to really reflect on what you're doing. And if you do those three things, you'll have happiness. And you don't need, not that extra possessions and money and things like that won't make you happy, but if you do have those things and you don't have the three things that actually make you happy, you'll never achieve happiness.
Yeah, I like this guy who wrote the Book of Five Rings.
Never heard of it.
His name is he's a famous Japanese samurai. His name is Miyamoto Musashi, and he he's very interesting because he breaks down, like, the different stages of life. Like, for example, let me see if I can find it here. For example, in his book, right, he's like, there are 5 ways in which men pass through life: as gentlemen, warriors, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Throughout the book, Musashi implies that the way of the warrior, as well as the meaning of a true strategist, is that somebody has made mastery of many art forms away from that of the sword, such as drinking tea, laboring, writing, and painting. Musashi has practiced all throughout his life. He was hailed as an extraordinary semi-artist in the use of ink. He just, I don't know, I just think, hold on. He's like everything that in your life that you want and you work hard at. And life, he makes it in this book that life is like the enemy, and you're always fighting the enemy. So you have to, like, learn various forms to prepare to fight the enemy. Like, one man can sit there and beat 10,000 men. Why? Because if he takes his craft seriously.
So is the key to find one of those paths and follow it to its end, or is it to be both the warrior and the merchant and the?
Well, the thing is, like, the different stages, like, in life.
Oh, they're different stages of one life. Right,
they're different stages of one life. But they happen
by themselves.
By themselves, yeah. But he describes them as, like, the gentleman and all this stuff. Like, let's see what he talks. He says something here. Hold on, if I can find it here.
And what time period is this approximately?
He wrote this. I think he was alive in, like, the. Hold on, let me go back. He was alive in. Well, it was from, like. He died in 1645.
Oh, wow! So this is right.
Yeah, this is a long time ago.
Yeah,
this is not anything.
But still, I mean, things like general wisdom like that is valuable.
Yeah, like,
no matter.
Like, for example, like, he talks about the void. That's, like, his last chapter, and he says, like, by knowing things that exist, you can know that which does not exist. Or, like, he says, in the void is virtue and no evil. Wisdom has existence. Principle has existence. The way has existence. The spirit is nothingness.
It's interesting. Yeah, I was actually reading on some stuff, and anybody that's listening to this, if there's anybody that bored, can go on and look this stuff up for themselves. I tend to be a skeptic when it comes to anything that doesn't fit the sort of known models of science that we come to accept, because I like to believe that the simplest explanation, or the best explanation, is always the simplest one. So, but I was reading some stuff about psi effects, which are basically psychological effects or effects of consciousness that sort of don't fit the standard model, but that are known researched effects with data that's out there that can't really be denied. That's statistically highly relevant. For example, they did these experiments of I'm sure pretty much anybody is familiar with this. It's the sense of being stared at. If you've ever been on a train and you're reading a book or something, and you just get a sense that somebody's staring at you, right? And then you turn your head, and sure enough, somebody's staring at you. Yeah. It's like, well, where do you get that sense from? What? Like, you don't see this person, so how do you know that somebody's staring at you? And they did experiments to try to quantify that effect and to see if it's real. And what they would do is they would have these people come into like a lab and stand facing a wall, and somebody's behind staring at them, and they would have to ask, respond, is somebody staring at you? And what they found is that they got it correct about 54% of the time. But
again, that's just a toss up between.
Then again, well, here's the thing:
chance on each side.
Chance is 50%. Well, they got it at 54% on average of several different trials, trial after trial after trial. So in other words, if you're flipping a coin, this is something that should be 20% or 50% if you think about half and half. Right. So in other words, the fact that there is an effect, even though it might be small, there is somewhat of an effect. Right. Then they did these other effects, these other studies where they put people under in the state of sensory deprivation. It's named after some psychologist, I forget his name. But they put you in this state where basically you have blindfolds on, you have gloves so that you can't feel anything, and you have headphones that are playing pink noise or white noise. And then what happens when you're in that state of sensory deprivation is something that's very similar to like a psychedelic trip, where what happens when you trip is basically your brain doesn't perceive some of the information that's coming in. And because nature abhors a vacuum, and so does your brain, it starts to fill that void with thoughts and patterns and possible things that this thing might be that you're seeing, and that's why you hallucinate, basically. Well, when you put yourself in that state of sensory deprivation, the same thing occurs. You place yourself in the vacuum, and your brain has to fill that vacuum with something, so it starts filling it with images and pictures and sights and sounds. You basically begin to trip out. And so what they would do is they would have one person in the experiment go in the state, and they would have another person who they were told to like mentally beam a picture to them. Yeah. And so they would give them like a picture of an airplane or the planet Mars or something like that, and they'd be asked to like mentally transmit it to this other person. And then the person would, and they would do this with a few images, and then the person would be taken out of that state, and and they would show them a series of 4 pictures at a time. One of them would be the picture that was beamed to them, and what they found was that their odds of picking the correct picture, experiment after experiment, I mean, we're talking about thousands upon thousands of, right. This isn't just like some statistically insignificant. They found it was about 32 to 36% accuracy in these trials.
That's weird.
Right, which is really weird because chance you would expect it to be 25%. Yeah. So it just shows that there is some sort of ability for humans to communicate with one another by some other way. Right. And then they did another experiment where they would show a viewer a series of slides, and some of the images in the slides are like really emotionally charged images, and some of them are very emotionally neutral. Yeah. And they would have they would ask the person to predict what kind of picture they're going to see next, whether it would be a charged one or a neutral one. Yeah. And they found that people have had a greater than chance probability of predicting what they're going to see next, and which is fascinating. So the thing that they deduced from it, this theory, is that there's some sort of greater consciousness that's aware of not only the world but of future states of itself.
Yeah.
And humans have a very sort of limited ability to tap into that consciousness.
Yep.
But there's like moments when we kind of break through, and these effects are very small. They did another one where it was sort of like a telekinesis study where instead of moving physical objects, what they did is they had a random number generator, and it would start off with a random number, let's say 0, and then the next number would either be a random number that goes up or a number that goes down, but it would happen, it would happen randomly. And the people were told to mentally try to push that number higher or lower, and once again they found, or to keep it steady, once again they found that it had a relevant statistical effect. And when they talk about statistical effect, supposedly it's something like, quadrillions to 1 of the odds of it being against, chance, because there is like so much movement going on that's like noticeable.
Right.
That, so it's like you have all these things that don't fit the standard model, and you could ask, well, why don't we hear about them more? Why aren't there more scientists talking about it? Because it's very easy for scientists, a lot of it is sort of like religion. Once you have these theories and you have this model, it takes a lot, right? It takes a lot. So, I mean, supposedly, theories are supposed to be able to get discarded easily. Right. And, I mean, you
bring in a new form of science.
Right. I mean, it happens every time. When Einstein came out with relativity, people thought he was crazy for a while. When quantum mechanics first came around, people were like, "This is absurd." Like, these things just don't behave like that. Like, how can a particle exist in two places at the same time? Well, it can. Like, that's just how the world works. The world that we observe doesn't work like that. But there's like this other world where a particle can go from point A to point B without ever being in between those 2 points.
Right.
It just goes directly from one to the other. It disappears from one and appears in another. But yet, for a period of time, it's in both places at the same time. How is that possible? Well, those are, that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
Like, things can go back in time.
Yeah.
A particle can travel back in time and then forward in time, and
Yep.
But yeah, so it just shows that there's a whole fuck of a lot that we don't know, and it's fascinating living in an age where, within our lifetime, we might get to discover a lot of it.
I hope so.
You have anything interesting with that?
Yeah, no, it's like, speaking of like teleportation, there's like a big article on this. I don't know if I should read it all, but
Can you summarize?
yeah, it's like
I mean,
this basically talks about like teleportation. It just got easier, but not for you, and like
teleportation is just like
the amount of like. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's just like a manipulation of space and time. Like the universe is on like a plane, a time plane, but it's not necessarily just all flat. It curves.
Right.
Literally, it'll curve. You'll have one floor, and it'll just curve to a second floor. And we're kind of in between. Like, we're in between planes, or we're on a plane. It's just that, instead, like, how like wormholes work. It's like, it's basically just like teleportation. You go through this hole and it leads you to another
Right, but
hole.
the problem with it is you have to pass through a singularity, which it'd be impossible to do that and come out alive. So, wait, is that what your thing is talking about?
Well, no, the thing is, like, this talks about, like, just the first step, right? The first step of teleporting a person is basically measuring and recording the position and the direction of the motion of the energy of every particle. So that would require a lot of data storage if it ever, like, would be available. And it's a lot. Like, it says, like, a conservative estimate would be that you would need 10 to the 22nd power gigabytes, followed by 22 zeros of hard drive space, and a stack of hard drives that are about like 20 light years tall. That's a lot of storage space.
Right. Oh, so what they're talking about is recording the. So they're talking about a different kind of teleportation. They're talking about literally recording what every particle is doing, and then that person gets erased and then rebuilt somewhere else based on the position and velocity of all those particles. Yeah, that we'll never see that in our lifetime.
No.
I don't think we'll. May never see that. Personally, I would never go through one of those things myself because
weird,
when you come out of it, you're no longer you.
No,
you're just
that's what I'm saying. Like, it kind of reminds me of Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory.
Right.
Or Fly. You ever watch the movie where the dude fucking merges with a fly because he goes through that thing?
Willy Wonka, everyone knows, but like it's like that machine goes down on that little boy and like picks up every particle and records it, and then he pops up in like the microwave across in like a tiny version.
Yeah, I mean, I think
kind of like that. Like,
yeah, I think sometimes it's good that like science chases like science fiction, but sometimes it just shouldn't. You know, like, it's like okay.
That's horrifying. So
right. Although you know, a lot of times that's where all the cool ideas come from, man.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, we would have never had the submarine if it wasn't for 20 Leagues Under the Sea.
Really?
Yeah, Jules Verne wrote that way before the submarine was ever invented.
That's excellent.
Yeah. I mean, that guy invented a bunch of shit. I think he invented the helicopter too, or he thought of the concept before, like.
Nice.
And then what was his name? If
the Wright brothers.
No. Jules Verne. He's the one that wrote 20 Leagues Under the Sea. That that was written like 1860 something or 18 something. The submarines weren't invented until like 1920 something. It's like he inspired that stuff, so that's kind of fascinating. And what was his name? That crazy Italian guy. I think it was Picasso, or maybe not Picasso. No, Picasso was like the abstract dude.
Crazy Italian guy.
Yeah, or maybe
Michelangelo,
Leonardo da Vinci, or maybe Michelangelo. I think he's the one that invented stuff, right?
Yeah,
he drew up
Da Vinci.
He was the guy. He actually invented a lot of the shit we use today, but like way before they had any like practical way of making it.
Galileo too, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Galileo was awesome.
It's like a lot of these stuff.
While we're talking about inventions, can I just say one thing?
What?
Yeah.
Fuck Edison and hell yeah Tesla.
Oh yeah, man! Tesla got screwed
just because
so bad,
Tesla
dude.
does not get enough recognition.
Yeah.
I just want to say boo Edison and hell yeah Tesla. And his birthday was like a month ago or something. I just want to say that. Now continue.
No, totally. I completely agree with that 110%. I feel like Edison,
stole his victories, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he totally crushed that guy. That poor fuck died like alone and like, like hopped up on booze or whatever. I mean, I might be making that part up. But yeah, I mean, it's sad that after a life of dedication, a life of, true achievement, true intellectual breakthroughs, that you're reduced to this, like,
second.
Man. But then in the end, both Tesla and Edison ended up dying in the end. And like, while Tesla doesn't get as much recognition here in the U.S., I feel like he's probably more of like a world figure than Edison is.
I hope so.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so.
Because I think so. I mean, the whole man. I mean, they're both significant in their own right, obviously. But if it wasn't for Tesla, man, can you imagine just like your whole fucking city just covered by overhead wires, just strung like everywhere, each one like this freaking thick, just because that's what it would take. You would have to have a power, and you have to have a power plant on like every few blocks, and just spitting out coal and disgusting, like, man, like, and they had that like New York City and like during like Edison times, it was getting to that point where you just had wires just strung. Like Lower Manhattan was just covered in wires. It was just obnoxious.
It's just so crazy the amount of like information and technology that we allow ourselves to know. Yeah. Speaking of that, right? I was reading this fucking article on the Washington Post and how North Korea got itself hooked on like a meth, and it's just
I wanted to hear about this.
And it's just so interesting. It's so interesting because, like, the fact is that North Korea has nothing to give to the world, really, except maybe coal. And since they isolate themselves from the entire fucking world, with the exception of China, they need a source of income. They need a source of income. So they started making these fucking meth labs, via the black market and trading with China. And, like... It's so retarded. Their health insurance and their health care, rather, it's non-existent, and they don't really have any medicines. So making meth for them provides the country with, because it's state-run, by the way. Like, these meth labs are state-run, which is fucked up.
Sure. No, I believe
it's a way for the country to make some hard-earned cash and trade in the black market, and then that spiraled, and now like there are people, civilians, making meth so they can actually get money and like have some sort of medicine for the lack of medicine that is in these hospitals.
Well, it's fascinating. I also read somewhere else that another significant source of North Korean GDP was counterfeit $100 bills. U.S. $100 bills. Supposedly they're pros at making these things, and then they have their agents or whatever go off to China and pass them off in China. That's pretty fucking cool.
It's fucking rad, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would love to just go to North Korea, man. Like visit the Hermit Kingdom. Like, that'd be so. I mean, you can do it. Like, and yeah, I've watched like the Vice documentary about the dudes that went there.
Yeah.
And there's some other like Canadians. And you go, and they go there, and it seems like everything's sort of working. Like, it's like, okay, well, you guys have an airport, and you have a city, and you have buses and shit, and cops, and like, it all seems to make sense.
Right.
But then it's like a facade. You go beyond the facade, and it's like just like total subsistence, just this sort of like, shit kicking like poor lifestyle. That it's just fascinating. But you can find that as a metaphor for any authority. It's just like every authority abuses its constituents to a certain degree. It's just a matter of to which degree they do it.
Yep.
And by looking at these extremes, you can sort of take that as like a cautionary tale of like, all right, how far do we let things like national pride take us?
Yeah. Right.
That's what we really learned to do.
Right.
It's just so interesting that you need these drugs to like alter your state and to like, I don't know, feel better about yourself. Like,
well, yeah, I mean,
I don't think you need them. I think that by the way that our society is run, that a lot of the time we're taught not really to think outside the box, and
right.
I think that when we're given opportunities to, it flies away with us. It's not that we can't; it's that we don't realize we can because we've always been taught to live within in the box. I think you have the ability, like, people have these psychedelic experiences, but or experiences with drugs of any sort, and they say that it opens up their ability to think, but after that your ability to think has been opened, or so you feel it has, and you tend to think like that on a more regular basis.
Well, that's not with all drugs. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about meth before.
Yeah.
Like with psychedelics, just because it puts you into a completely different state, it breaks you from your reality. It forces you to think in different ways.
Yeah.
With meth, I would love to find any sort of revelation that anybody's ever had on crystal meth, or any sort of life realization. I don't think there's I don't think there's any real depth to those substances. It's all about really. You have to understand the pharmacology of these things, and it's like if something just acts on the pleasure sensors in your brain, it's like, what do you expect it to do? Well, you're going to feel good, okay, and then of course you're going to want to do it again, and then you'll never be able to erase that memory from your head, the memory of like how good that one thing felt. Mm-hmm. It's always, it's always going to be there with you. So, ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways. I'm glad I've never tried like the really like euphoric drugs that these people get fucked up on, because you know what, you never know what could happen.
Well,
because once you try that once, that memory is there forever. You'll never erase it.
Well, anyways, just like you're saying, ignorance is bliss. I can understand why, on a dictator's point of view, why you would sell meth to the black market, because your country's you're trying to isolate your country, and if you're encouraging free trade, because that's how I don't think North Korea has a lot of resources to sustain on.
No.
So they do have to somehow make money to buy all these resources from like from like
rest of the world.
Asian country. I don't think they buy anything from the West because you know they want to dissociate themselves from the West. But
well, then there's some pretty
yeah.
nasty
So I
sanctions
mean, if
going on.
you're encouraging free trade, you're also you have no choice but to also have to let your citizens travel because they want to keep everything ignorant because their country is just is basically what do you call those, like god kings?
Cult of personality.
No.
Well, that's what it is.
Like
I mean, that's what Joseph's telling me.
like those societies. It's not really like a divine monarchy. Because,
I know what you're thinking. There's
yeah,
a term for it. That's
because,
what Greeks were back when the pharaohs. They believe that their king
right.
is God, basically.
I mean,
literally.
because their citizens. Their citizens are like they think
Something
their
crazy.
dictator, their leader, their ruler is a god. Like you don't even if you ever been inside like a Korean.
Well, no, their president. Correction.
Yeah.
Their president to this day is a dead guy. Kim Jhon or Kim Il Sung.
No, it's
is still their president. The guy that's leading the country now, he's like the de facto ruler, and he makes all the executive decisions. But the official title of president still belongs to Kim Il Sung, who's been dead for 40 years. It's actually the only country in the world that's run by a dead guy.
I mean, it's anyways. Like
Yeah.
if you ever been inside of like a North Korean home, they don't even have pictures of their like they don't even have family pictures. All they have a picture of is their leader, like literally. So I can see why you sell meth to make money instead of trading with other countries because it's just because people will find out there's a better life outside of North Korea and they're gonna want to flee or it's gonna cause like a social revolt or a government revolt. Like
yeah, I'm
revolution.
interested to see what will happen with that. I'm actually more honestly worried about the possibility of North Korean collapse than some sort of war breaking out. Because if some sort of war breaks out and then you have the U.S. and then the U.S. goes in there, South Korea goes in there, they take over the shit. It'd probably take them 2 weeks, no big deal. If North Korea actually collapses, just think about it, all those fucking nukes and who's got them. And now these guys have to go in there and try to figure out like what's going on. Everybody's looting the fuck out of these like weapons warehouses, right? And then you have the U.S. and South Korean soldiers trying to go in there and figure out like I mean I'm sure they're working on all these contingency plans right now and what they're gonna do like when shit hits the fan. And it's cool because it's gonna happen in our lifetime. And I love like it's such a morbid thing, but we all have it in us. And if anybody that's like here is listening to this wants to deny it, they're full of shit. We all have like this morbid fascination with watching fucked up shit go down.
Of course.
And it's kind of a cool thing when these news stories happen. Like as fucked up as that sounds, man. You see, you hear about these wars and tsunamis and earthquakes, and you're like, oh shit, man. Like this just made my day interesting. Like it's fucked up that all these people are dying, but it's like it's like hey, something going on,
That is really sad.
right? It's how it really is, though.
Humanity is the cause of humanity's fall.
Yes, I mean, for example, this fucking Facebook fucking thing. Like, I was reading on the BBC News that how like Facebook use makes people feel worse about themselves. So it's like Facebook has helped us with just connecting, filling that basic need of just connecting with people. And having like those connections not broken. Like, could you imagine life before Facebook? Like, you'd have to call your friends on the phone and hang out with them and do these things, and then eventually you might lose their number or their address, and then lose touch. Right?
I mean, I remember
Facebook crashed a couple of years ago.
I think
it was like,
Facebook, MySpace, all that social networking site, basically, the creation of all those sites is like society saying we're giving up our right to privacy, like literally, because we're always posting about our private lives on a social networking site, always, constantly. So I mean, now like governments are making up all these laws where that it just infringes our rights because it's just because
Well, that was happening way before network
Right.
sites. We've just made it 500 times.
Yeah, they just yeah,
We just all
exactly.
put it in one place with the name for them.
Right.
All right. So anyway,
But this thing talks about how, like, you know,
Well,
before
that makes sense.
like, you know, we'd have all these things, and then it'd be hard to track people down, and you lose numbers, you lose touch, right? And now Facebook is here, and now you have all your friends wherever they go. They can move to fucking Japan, for crying out loud, but you still have their contact information. You still can contact them. But the ironic thing is that even though you have these people all around you, you still, according to this article, you still feel like you're missing out on life.
Yeah.
Because you're stuck in the computer. And you can be at a barbecue with all your friends, or you could be doing all these things, but you're like sitting there on Facebook looking at what your friends are actually doing.
But it's not what your friends are actually doing, it's
Right.
what they're posting.
Exactly.
And you see what they're posting, and you assume it's
Right.
what they're actually doing.
Right.
Because people filter what they put on Facebook, right? You're not going to put the mundane, oh, I took a shit, here's a picture of it, you know? What you're going to do is you're going to post the fun stuff that you do and the interesting places you go. So you see all this and you think, man, all these people's lives are so much more interesting than mine. But it's really not the case. You know, you got to look at these things for what they are. You know, Facebook is like your own idealized version of yourself,
Right?
And you put out this version of yourself that is like sort of like what you believe or what you like to believe, and it's like, here you go, and you try to sell it to these other people.
But just think about how far, like, we've come, right? Like, we were hunter gatherers, whatever. Then, like, we became explorers. Then we became intellectuals, and we try to find answers and search more and more people and do all these grandiose things now. And now we have all this technology, and it's right in front of us. We don't have to go anywhere, so we're subsequently just really kind of we're disconnected, but we're programming ourselves to just be a dot. That's all we are. We're just this one dot. There's a series of dots. We stay at home. We don't live life. We just kind of like, we have it all at once.
Well, some people.
I know, but I'm saying, like, as far as like Facebook, because I mean everyone's on fucking Facebook. You know what I mean? Like, you're on Facebook. Like, right now I have a Facebook, you know, tab open. I mean, everyone's on Facebook. But like, I'm just saying, like, eventually, if sites like Facebook and all that stuff, eventually everything.
The next level.
Yeah, the next level is like, the next level is like, we're not explorers. We're just robots, just doing this life thing, just at a screen, and that's it. Like, everything is on our fingertip. Like,
can you imagine the future, like, jobs and stuff like that? It'd be crazy. Like, as an actor, you got to think of what are some of the cool possibilities of somebody that puts on a virtual helmet and goes into a virtual world, and here you are as a virtual actor, and you act out a scene for them that part of, like, this game, this, like, you know, expensive game that they pay, like, you know, money to, like, play, where you actually have real actors that, like, you know, like, fucking shoot at you or, like, kidnap you or something crazy. Like, I'm looking forward to that, man.
Yeah.
How cool, like, some of those things are going to be when you know, when people are like us, or like in their 50s and 60s, man. These games are going to be fucking sick.
Yeah. I mean,
you got to take this stuff in moderation.
No, of course. I mean, they just started, like, fucking Samsung just started releasing, like, TVs that, like, their screens are, like, flexible. Like, you can have a TV literally on that fucking corner right there. Like, you can have a corner screen, like, and it wouldn't break. Just the things that are happening now, like, it's given us more and more, like, I guess, options and opportunities not to really leave the house. Like, our way of accessing everything is amazing, but I think that we as humans still need to go out and explore. Like, that's what basically this Facebook thing is article is talking about. It's like, it's not bad to have everything right there, but if you do this like the way that we all have done this fucking Facebook thing, some of us, you're missing out on life. You're not actually living life. That's why you feel lonely, and you don't have, your self-worth is like nothing, because you're meant to sit there and go out and explore these things, and if everything is just in your face and you're not exploring them, I mean, you're not discovering them because they're already in your face. Like, what's the fucking point? It's like, It's like someone sitting there and like telling you the ending of fucking some movie. It's like, oh, well, I want to see this movie. This movie's great. Oh yeah, let me tell you what happens. Blah 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 blah. Like you're watching a trailer and like it gives you like the major plot. It's like, okay, well now I don't really want to see it now. It's like the detriment of like losing a friend on Facebook that you care about. It's like, oh, I'm gonna delete this guy. Like that. It's in itself is fucking ridiculous. I'm gonna delete this person. Boom.
Well,
and then you feel all hard, the hurt. Like,
no, I mean, like what Zeik said. It's, you know, ignorance is like bliss, and like if you're always constantly on Facebook, you're going to feel like something's missing out because you see all these posts. You know, whatever you're doing, you're still gonna feel one-upped. You're still gonna feel like this guy did better than you because, you know, he has something posted up and, you know, there's tons of likes and comments or whatever, and you're just there, just finish doing your thing, and then you post it, you tell like a post about it, or you post a picture and there's no likes or whatever. You know, you're always gonna feel like you're constantly have been how do you say, one-upped by somebody. Somebody did something better than you did. You know, unlike if we didn't have Facebook, we'd all just be doing our own thing, just alone by ourselves. You know, we're just focused on that one thing instead of waiting for like social exception. You know.
yeah, it's like a virtual high school.
Right. It's that's what it basically is. Like
the more likes we
you know,
get, the better we feel about ourselves because the more popular we are.
Right.
Which is actually pretty sad.
How many times have you been on Facebook, right? And you put up a post that you think is cool, and then it doesn't get any likes, and you're just like, fuck it, and then you feel like you have to delete it because you feel stupid. You're like, damn, I put this thing up and like nobody gives a shit, you know? But then you gotta stop and think about it, and you're like, alright, but like,
maybe I'm just
what am I really doing? Like maybe this was just a stupid thought, you know? Like,
Right.
But originally, social networking sites was intended for like PR, like public relations. You know, to
sure. So the question is, does it do more harm than good, or does it do more good than harm? I mean, we can sit there and point out the harm, but you know, there's also like these great things. Like for example, I have like a friend that's coming to visit me that I haven't seen since I was like 8. Like this girl that I went to like elementary school with. Actually, not 8, maybe like 9 or 10. But we're like childhood friends, and now she's like married. Right, and we just happen to find each other like through the social media stuff. And she's like, hey, I'm coming to New York City between like October 5th and 10th, you know, we should like meet up and like walk around some landmarks and shit. I'm like, yeah, like of course, you know, like that's so fucking cool, you know. This is somebody that like just having these sort of interactions, and the power of, I feel like, loose connections is also very important. Like you're always going to have your close connections, your real connections, like your immediate circle of friends, but Facebook allows you to keep in touch with people that you don't really talk to.
It's interesting that you bring this up because if you remember correctly, last semester I took social networks.
Right.
And I read this entire book called Networked, which is all about the networking world that we've become part of. And when talking directly about Facebook, which they did throughout the entire book, they mentioned that Facebook has the ability, it seems, to create a lot of what they considered weak links or weak ties.
Right.
And that even though like we do have strong ties with other people, the ties that tend to take over Facebook are that of weak ties, where we can be acquaintances with somebody, know everything about their life, or if we need something and we know that they are good at one thing, we have the ability to get a hold of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it allows us to network with other people we otherwise would never meet, and we may never meet these people, but we could get some crazy
You're not
information.
You're not going to keep 565 phone numbers in your cell phone.
Exactly.
You know?
But like, it does create this huge thing, and a huge argument they have with Facebook is, it provides all of these positive, weak links and ties, but what does it do to the diminishing number of actual strong ties we have with people these days?
Right.
Because it is in many ways excluding us, but then again, that's the world we live in. We have less time. You know, we have to rush around. Keeping in contact with people is getting harder and harder. With all of these time constraints and responsibilities that come with just everyday life. You know?
No, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Epicurus is right, man. Like, you know,
live to live.
Yeah, live to live. You know, find a circle of like cool people that you like being around, and just fucking, you know, and just like live with those people, man. Don't
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
if you have a family, that's cool. But if it's just like you and your wife, like you're gonna get fucking sick of each other. You're gonna get on each other's throat. If you have other people around you to just tell you to like chill out, you know what I mean? Like you're always gonna have somebody to take one side or the other and just be like, hey, whoa, like provide like an outside perspective. That's why like we got so much psychosis in society. Is these like nuclear families and like and because it drives you fucking insane. Just like I've lived, in a lot of those. Obviously, I think we all have, where it's just like your immediate family, or it's just like you and one other family member, you and like your significant other, and you're just constantly like in each other's face, or it's just you by yourself, and that's when you get really fucking depressed. Like, humans we're social creatures, man. We're not cats. We're not lions.
It's true.
Speaking of cats.
Yeah. Cute cats. I think there's a cat in out there.
Oh boy.
Okay, alright, okay.
What? Oh. Wow, it's almost been an hour. Do you guys want to save this, the next stuff for the next time we do this? Want to call it a wrap?
Sure, can I make one correction though? When I was
Yes.
speaking about Asian philosophy, thank you ADD brain, and it being 5 years ago. I actually was talking about both just Buddha and Confucius. I combined the 8 steps to enlightenment.
I was gonna say,
Buddha.
right, I wasn't gonna correct you
But
on
the
that,
values,
but it sounded
the
like...
values of like on your path to self-realization, self-enlightenment, and that sort of thing, to living a righteous and virtuous life of Confucius was the selfless and giving aid and not doing things to benefit you, even though you can. It's not always bad, but stuff of that. It's called Yi, Li, and Ren. But yeah, the 8 steps of enlightenment, that's actually Buddha.
That's Buddha. Yeah.
So I just wanted to correct myself.
Buddha.
Alright, well, this has been another fun installment. We will continue this next week or whenever the time seems conducive, I guess.
Yep. Farewell.
Farewell to the illusion.
And Buddha be with you.
Buddha.